Hello everyone, it's Dio from Firm Fair Gaming, bringing you another World of Warcraft video. Today we're going to be covering a little bit more about the lieutenants that you find in the Mythic Plus dungeons, and we're going to focus on the best anima powers to take from them to help you complete your run. So, of course, each one drops a series of 3 different anima powers, and they are role specific, so DPS it is fixed for what they can choose from, as well as the tank has their options and the healers have those, and like I said, it is dependent on your role. So without further ado, let's jump into it. We're going to start with DPS. Now the best anima powers for the DPS are as follows. Off Sagadon the Breaker, you would pick the Stone Ward. So this is the one that gives you a shield for 20% of your maximum health every 45 seconds. That's pretty huge. It helps your healer out. The other ones are just not as good. Like there's a little bit of lead shield. It'll never amount to the same as the Stone Ward. And Tiny Dancing Shoes, upon entering combat, you dodge 2 melee or range attacks against you. You should never really have aggro upon entering combat, so it just kind of becomes null, which really leaves the only obvious choice being the Stone Ward. Off Incinerator Arcaloth, you would want to have Champion's Brand, so this is well above 70% health. Your haste or critical strike is increased by 8%, and your highest stat is always chosen. It is the highest DPS that we can get out of this section as well. Off Oros Cold Heart, we want to. This is a little bit more, you can kind of pick or choose, but I feel the best one here is the Regenerative Fungus, where taking damage heals you for 1.5% of your maximum health. So it just helps out overall for constant damage, like throughout the dungeon. Whereas we also have a Vial of Desperation. This is whenever you take more than 25% of your maximum health in damage from a single attack, you gain 50% increased movement speed and suffer 50% less damage for 3 seconds. This is more in a situation where there's like one-shot mechanics or where you yourself are kind of failing to some mechanics in a dungeon. So if you're still suffering a little bit from not knowing quite your positioning and taking a little bit of unnecessary damage, you might want to take this to help your healer out. But I feel that the Regenerative Fungus is a better pick as it has overall more healing throughout the dungeon, and so therefore the better choice. Lastly, off Executioner Verith, the best one is Dagger of Necrotic Wounding. So this places a dot on the target, and it's a single target DPS, and it turns out to be about 10 or 12% of your damage once you're able to select it. So it's just more higher damage. Volcanic Plumage is a little bit not quite as much for, and it's more just for AoE when you have big packs. But overall, the Dagger Necrotic Wounding is the higher DPS, and it's a better DPS than even picking up another Champion's Brand. So those are the 4 different anima powers that you want to pick up if you are a DPS. So moving on to tanking, off the start, we will say that there are more choices for a tank than there are any of the other roles. So off Sagadon, the top choice is the Stone Ward. So this is the one that gives you shield for 20% of your maximum health, and of course refreshes every 45 seconds. That is 90% of the time what you would like to take. The only other option would be Broken Mirrors. So this is magic damage taken is reduced by 15%, and you would only want to take this if there is a boss fight where you are worried about the magic damage and that you may not have enough cooldowns for it. So that would be the only instance in which you would take that. But I feel like 90%, maybe even 95% of the time, you will want to take the Stone Ward. Off Incinerator Arcaloth, here we have a couple different options. So you have Crumbling Bulwark, which I think will be the main one. So this is your versatility is increased by 5%, and upon entering combat, your damage taken is reduced by 40% for 4 seconds. So this just helps you out when you're making big pulls off the start, or if you're a class that suffers a little bit from being vulnerable at the start of a pull, this will just help you out here until you get all your like Barkskin and all that stuff rolling, or Iron Furs. So this is what you'll want to pick up there if you're a little bit worried about that. Otherwise, I feel like the Champion's Brand is a good one just for some extra DPS. You may not be above 70% all the time, but I still feel that in Mythic Plus Dungeons, most of the time the tank is still around 70% or higher. The fifth skull is you only want to pick this up if you are in a dungeon where you can do massive big pulls, because it only kicks in if there are 5 or more enemies within 10 yards. So this is limited to just a few of the dungeons where you're actually able to do the big pulls like that. So do not pick this up if you're doing Theater of Pain, because obviously there is only maybe 2 instances where you will run into this or will come in handy. So it's very situational and depends on the group as to whether you're going to be doing all these big pulls, as well as if the dungeon will allow it. Off Oros, we want to pick up Pendant of the Martyr. So you grant 10% reduced damage against area of effects to all allies within 10 yards. So this is really good for like some of the dungeons where there's lots of AoE damage. So, and comes to mind as Sanguine comes to mind for that, Sanguine Depths. Particularly the third boss has some area damage there, so this will come in handy for that one. As well as the only other one that kind of comes to mind would be the Handbook of Uncivil Etiquette. So deal 10% increased damage to targets you successfully interrupt for 8 seconds. Lastly, for Executioner Verith, here there's only one obvious choice, and that's the Stygian's King's Barbs. Hopefully I said that correctly. When enemies strike you in melee combat, Shadow Barbs lash out from you and deal 4% of your current health and shadow damage to them. From what I've seen on DPS meters, this is huge DPS for the tanks. I want to say 90% of the tanks have chosen this. We did some experimenting and chose some of the other ones as well, but this was the clear winner. It's massive amounts of damage and just helps. Like, it's so good, just so good. So yeah, there's only really one choice for Execution of Verith. I would say you should definitely pick up the Stygian King's Barbs. Lastly, we're going to cover the healer. So what the healer wants to pick up off Sagadan is we're going to pick up the Stone Ward. So this is the shield that shields you for 20% of your maximum health, and this absorb refreshes every 45 seconds. The only runner-up might be the self-embalming kit, which increases all self-healing by 50%, but that is going to require the GCD in which you're going to use healing yourself. So the Stone Ward is 20% of your health, and it's automatic, so I would stress to use the Stone Ward. I think it's the better choice. Off Incinerator, we are going to go with either the Champion's Brand, so while above 70% health, your haste or critical strike is increased by 8%. Or if you suffer a little bit for AoE healing, you can pick up the Bottle of Sanguine Ichor. So this basically, as you're healing, the target has a chance to drop a splash of Sanguine Ichor, and it heals up to 5 allies for a certain amount. So if you're a class that suffers a little bit on AoE healing, maybe you want to pick this up just as a little bit of a benefit. But otherwise, I would say pick up the Champion's Brand. Off Aura's Coldheart, the best choice here is the Satchel of the Hunt. So while in combat, you grant all allies within 12 yards an additional 30% movement. To me, that's the best power because it just helps out your team. The only other ones here is being able to eat faster. I don't feel that's very good because we're going to take a power off the Execution of Verith, which will help us out with our mana troubles. Situationally, if you have a group that does not have a lot of interrupts and you need extra interrupts or stuns, you can take the Gavel of Judgment. So particularly if you are a healer that doesn't auto attack much. So this would give you an ability where your auto attacks can stun a target for 2 seconds. And this happens once every 30 seconds. So that's very situational, only if you need more CC or interrupts in a group that does not have many. Lastly, off Executioner Verith, we are going to take, or I feel you should take, Overflowing Chalice. So this is when healing a target is a chance to generate loose mana, which you can just run around and pick up while the fight goes on, and it restores 6% of your maximum mana. I found doing this, I didn't need to pick up the portable feeding trough for quicker drinking, and I never ran out of mana. And it was just the best possible one. It just helped for more fluid through the dungeon, letting you just progress more naturally like you would when you had Pride that would refresh your mana as you go. So to me, that is the number one choice for the healer. This is our quick video on the Anima powers that you can get from the Lieutenant in the Mythic Plus Dungeons. As always, we appreciate any likes and subscribes. If you have any questions or comments, let us know below. And of course, you can always find us on Twitch. Come hang out with us there. We'd love to chat with you. Have a good one, everybody.